As you can tell from the title of this video, I'm out of hospital and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you back to another video after what has been, it's fair to say it's been a pretty challenging week. I don't really feel like there's any other way to start this video than to sort of dive right back to the start, to the crash, which is what caused all this mayhem. So, Saturday afternoon we was at Chicksands Bike Park having the session of our lives. We just met up with little Ben. I'd given him a GoPro. That was really nice feeling for me. He was stoked. Energy was really good. We went over to the dirt jumps to have a session. So there with my good friend Cam, and we were feeding off each other, pushing each other like we always do when we're riding. However, last trick of the day for me, things didn't really go to plan, and I tried a front flip, miscalculated it when there's not much room for error on that trick anyway, and probably had one of the worst sort of styles of crashes that you could have doing that trick, because any sort of rotation trick, if you over rotate, you hit the floor with not just the speed and the impact that you're traveling at, but the impact of the rotation as well. So I was basically fired out of a cannon into the ground. Instantly knew that it was a heavy crash because I started to have a fit on the floor and lost control of my body. Once that eventually stopped, which was probably about 20 seconds later, it was one of those, I just knew I laid there and I said to myself, like, I'm so broken right now. I could just feel pain everywhere, and it wasn't just all pain as if I've had a knock. It was like, this is a broken pain, something's not right. Why did the accident happen? Well, I don't think there's any need to make excuses up, because I made a mistake at the end of the day and I'm aware of that. But I think it's always good to sort of evaluate what you're doing in life and what happened. And we was on the back end of a really busy period, and I'll be completely honest, I went to that session feeling super tired, overworked, and I didn't have a straight, clear mind. My brain was really foggy and I was really struggling to process, but at the same point I was pushing myself to, let's get through today, let's get this video done, that will put us nice and ahead. It means we can have a few catch-up days in the days after, and that's putting yourself in quite a dangerous position. You know, any line of work, any job that people do, you get overworked and you work hard and you push the limit. But a lot of jobs you can make a mistake and it has consequences, but it's maybe not a consequence that results in an injury. Whereas what I do for a living, it's a game of inches, and there's not always a lot of room for error. I've done it for a long time. You know, a lot of tricks are second nature and muscle memory, but there's always something that you've left a stone unturned. And unfortunately, the other day it just crept up on me and I made a mistake. I'm putting it down to that my mind wasn't 100% in it, so that's my fault. And you can't look at it like, you can't be too hard on yourself. You know the risk when you get on the bike, but certainly, like any sort of mistake or injury or anything in life, that you can always learn from it. And I think that I've sort of taken a lesson from this, and I can, without being too hard on myself, I can look at what I've done and evaluate and hopefully improve for the future to avoid even being in that situation where that might have happened. I had a really good crew of people there who helped me to get to the side of the jumps off the track and laid me on my side, and we waited for about half an hour until the emergency services arrived. When they managed to check all my blood pressures and all that sort of stuff, and I was stable, and they said I was able to walk up to where the car was, which was a miracle. After hitting the ground that hard, to be up on your feet walking around was it was pretty insane, to be fair. The pain that I had was a very familiar pain. In 2013 I'd actually put a tear or a laceration into my right kidney, and I had a very familiar pain but on the other side of my body, so I knew that something was up. And when I got to the hospital and explained what had happened and where the pain was coming from, they were super concerned because you've got organs this side, you've got your spleen and your kidney. I went straight in for a CT scan of my whole upper body, because obviously I'd taken a really big impact to my head as well. Suffered a bit of a concussion, and they were checking that my neck and everything was okay and there was no damage there, and all of that come back okay. And what they found on the scan was that I had put I had put a 2.5 centimetre cut into my spleen, which had been bleeding. There was blood in my pelvis, but at the time of the scan there was no active bleeding, which means it wasn't bleeding out, which was a good sign, because it meant that there was a chance that I could keep my spleen and not have to have it removed, which is quite a big surgery, big cut down your stomach. They have to dive around, get your spleen, and not only that, it comes with instant lifelong complications, because your spleen is really a crucial part of your immune system. So it would have meant that I'd have been very vulnerable to illnesses and just being unwell. So it would have been tablets every day, a very strict diet, all that sort of stuff. Manageable, but just not really sort of ideal, or what you want to, a route you want to go down. So when I was in hospital, my sort of instant recovery strategy was very strict bed rest. So strict bed rest means laying down. You're not even allowed to sit, not even allowed to lift your head off the bed. So I was laid completely flat for probably getting on for sort of 55-60 hours, about 2.5 days. And that was, mentally, that was a real challenge, because I was in a lot of pain. Like, my whole left side was sore, my whole stomach was bruised, and it presented a lot of challenges, because firstly, where I'd hit my spleen, that had affected all my digestive system. It can make it sort of shut down, and my stomach was all swollen, so I started to get really bad stomach cramps and indigestion. To add to that, trying to eat laying down was probably not one of the best things to go with that, because as I was swallowing food, I could feel it stuck there, and I was very quickly put onto a liquid diet. And also, you know, you sit there for an hour sometimes and you sort of stand up, oh, my bum's a bit numb, or my legs are aching. To lay in one position for that period of time causes a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on your back, your shoulders, like your bottom, all these areas, and it just, yeah, it can really sort of have a lot of other impacts on your body around the actual injury which I was in there to treat. But it was important not to move, because I couldn't disturb the healing of the spleen. If that started bleeding again, it was instant surgery. And that was monitored actually by having my observations taken. They could tell if I was bleeding by my pulse, blood pressure, and what else did they do it by?
Blood tests.
Oh, blood tests, yeah, to check my haemoglobin level, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cara, as a nurse, I'm just checking that I'm getting everything right. So 2 days like that, and then it was, after 2 days I was allowed to sit up in bed. This felt like a sort of a real big stepping stone and a victory in the right direction, and I was sort of, all this time I was having medication to help with the clotting, to stop the bleeding, and being able to sit up was felt like a big step of progress. 2 days later I was then able to stand up, which again felt like a real big victory, because I could then go from just being laid in bed or sat up in bed to sitting in the chair next to the bed. So there was a bit of a sort of divide in the day. You could get up and then sit in the chair, and then when you're ready to go to bed, get back into the bed. And then on the final day in hospital, which was Friday, I was able to just sort of roam around and walk around, and that was really nice. I remember the first night laying there in a lot of pain, not even able to move a whisker, just being like, oh, I can't wait until I'm at the point where I can go over to the window and look outside. And yeah, one of the things I did was just sort of like stand up and go look out the window, because it's all these little things that when you can't do anything, all of a sudden mean a lot to you, and they become really sort of like, it just feels like a big victory. It's like, yeah, that's so nice just to have that sort of freedom back of a basic thing in life that every day you take for granted. I was then told that I could be discharged, and it was really nice to hear, but it had to be right. And I spoke with the consultant and we both agreed that it was the time to be discharged. However, if that had been earlier in the week and I didn't feel like I was ready, then I would have spoke up, because it's an organ, and if it starts bleeding inside, at least in the hospital you're in the right place. If something happens, it's monitored and they can do the treatment that's required straight away. Whereas if that happened at home, then you could be really stuck, and it could get you in a really tricky position if you started bleeding out internally. So I was discharged, Cara come and pick me up, and we got back home, and once again that was sort of like a really nice sort of feeling. And the first thing I noticed was how quiet it was actually being around the house, because even at night hospitals are a very, very noisy, busy place. There's a lot of people working, there's a lot of machines running, so just like the peacefulness of being in the house was really nice. And since then, I mean, this is 2 days later, had a couple of really good nights sleep. I feel like I've taken 2 big steps since we've been home, and just being around the guys again. Elliot got back yesterday, Sam was back the first night I was back, and just being around people with good energy, and that makes a real big difference to your mentality. And I know I've got to take my time. I've got a 3-month period now with no riding, but I understand how important it is to stick to that, because this isn't really a injury that you want to open up or have reoccur. I've got my helmet here with me, and the reason for that is because this saved my life the other day. I've always worn a helmet. I've always been a huge advocate and in favour of everyone wearing helmets when they ride bikes, no matter how good or bad you are. All that aside, this saved my life. I hit my head so hard that I had a fit on the floor and I was concussed afterwards. If I didn't have it on, I don't even want to think what would have happened to my skull. The helmet doesn't look to be too damaged from here, and Cara even sort of picked it up and was like, oh no, it's fine. But on closer inspection, it might be quite hard to see on the camera, but on closer inspection you can see, so this side the helmet's nice and thick, the padding, because that's the side I didn't hit my head. This side, it's compressed right into about 1/4 of the thickness of that side, and that is all just from where my head hit the floor. So the helmet is 100% done its job. And unfortunately, out and about, you do often see people riding, even some bike parks we've been to recently, I've seen people riding with no helmets, and it makes me cringe to see it, but even more so after having an accident like that. So if you're watching this and you don't wear a helmet, then I can't stress to you from my point of view how important it is to always protect your head, because the injuries I've got away lightly, I feel, for the crash that I had, but had I not had the helmet on, we might not even be sat here filming this video now. It could have been really, really nasty. So always protect your brain, kids. I guess that brings us on to a slightly more positive note of what happens next. So like I just said, I've got a 3-month period coming up with no riding, just relaxing, resting, which is really important. Try and eat well, try and stay nice and healthy, because all that helps with the recovery. And I'll be doing everything that I can, when I can, to speed up the process in the safest way possible. But it's just really important that it heals, because like any injury, if you cut corners, it's only going to keep coming back to haunt you. And something like a ruptured spleen, you don't really want to keep coming back haunting you with problems. In the meantime, I am going to 100% continue making videos. I've got plenty of ideas. It would be great to hear your ideas, what you'd like to see. My bikes all need a clean. We've got the garage that needs finishing. So although I'm not actually going to be on the bike for a while, I think that there's plenty that we can still be doing, and it'll just be, obviously when you're in the full swing of riding, you don't normally make time to do these types of video, when actually I think they could be really interesting. They could be beneficial for a lot of you. So now's the time to focus and put my energy into some of that content. So if there is anything particular that you'd like to see, then please do let us know in the comments below. Before I sign this one off, I would just like to say a massive thank you to everyone that helped at Chicksands that day. If you was there, you know who you are. Cara has been a massive help. Obviously it's super stressful for her. I know injury's part of the game and she knows that too, but it's super stressful. Like, I'm still really slow. She's having to run around, help a lot. Last week she was back and forth to Bedford Hospital, which is a 2-hour journey either way. She done that each day, so huge shout out to Cara and just everyone close in my circle. You've all supported me a lot so far, even if it's just a message, and that leads me on to you guys. You've all reached out and put really nice positive messages, which I promise you, when I was laid there in hospital trying to get comfortable because I couldn't sit up, just flicking through reading every single message on Instagram, direct messages, YouTube comments, whatever platform it was you reached out on, that gave me such a morale boost, and it made the whole process a lot easier. So thank you very much for that. I hope that you've enjoyed this slightly different video. I'm really positive, I'm feeling good, you guys should be stoked too, and we will see you guys in the next one when hopefully we're doing something a little bit more exciting.